Welcome back, Pinball fans. We're back with another episode, and today we're going to focus on classics, or the skills that you'll need to dominate your classics tourneys. I think this is so important for a brand new competitive player because it teaches you two things. It teaches you, one, patience, and it teaches you, two, basic flipper skills. These are the two things you'll need to dominate any classics tournament, but there are a little minutia that I definitely focus on when I go into these tournaments. Let's dive in. Now, I would say there are three core things I think about before I jump into any classic game. We'll go through them top to bottom. So number one here is flipper feel. How are the flippers feeling when I'm playing the game? Every classic game tends to have a range of flipper feels versus the modern Sterns, which tend to have one of two feels, I'd say. But with classics, you can kind of get anything. It might be wear and tear on the flippers. It might be the size of the flippers. Are they soft? Are they spongy? Do they feel heavy when you are flipping them? Do they feel slow on the come up? These are all things that I keep mental notes about so I know what the game is capable of and what I'm capable of doing on those flippers. Number two, let's talk about flipper ability. All of your basic little flipper skills, post passing, cradling, tap passing, dead bouncing. Is it safe on this game? If I have any chance to get a practice time on the game, obviously I'm going to be testing all of these things out. Many classics, the post pass just doesn't work. The posts are a little bit thicker or a little bit further in than your average game. Sometimes when you want to cradle up, you'll see that the ball just stays there and then it starts to roll off the tip towards the center. Those are some of the older games, but that is a thing that can very much happen on the classic, so you have to be wary of that if it doesn't let you cradle into the little corner, the angle that most modern games let you. And then how are you going to get it from side to side if you can't do those things? You have tap passing, which is very specific to a certain genre of game. If you get a chance to dead bounce, is it too floaty? Does it go into the other sling every single time? Very important to walk up to a game and know exactly what you're capable of. And then third, let's talk about the mechanics and the gameplay. How juicy are the spinners? Many games are spinners games, I would say. And when you rip those spinners, you want to get a lot of points. But maybe those spinners just aren't spinning as much as you would want. Are you getting a lot of points out of it? Is the game 5-ball or 3-ball? This might change the way that you think about the game when you're playing it competitively against other players. And then does tilt endgame? Huge information. Generally you don't want to be tilting any classic just because bonus tends to be a lot in classics, but if you end up tilting, is it the end of the world, or do you wait until last ball to really go for big moves? These are all important questions you should be asking yourself before you walk up. Let's get into the tough realities of classics. They're gonna drain you. They were kind of built to. Back in the day when you put a quarter in, they wanted to take your quarter, so they were not meant for long play. They were meant to challenge a player and, force you to really be on your toes. And the only thing that counteracts that is incredible flipper skills. Flipper skills will save you. Repeatable shots are king, and safety is everything on the classic. Something that you always want to be sure of is, are there dangerous shots on this game? On the classic, there's bound to be. There's bound to be either certain drop targets, or maybe a ramp reject, or maybe a captive ball hit. Those all tend to be dangerous shots, but you got to find it on your game, and then you have to ask yourself the question, are those shots valuable in the game? Do I even need to think about going for them? Because if you can choose not to go for dangerous shots, you will live a lot longer and be doing a lot more in the game that it asks you to. Another question you might want to ask yourself is it a bonus game? If it's a bonus game, then you really have to be wary of not tilting. You have to be wary of making sure that you get as much done as possible before you drain, right? Because on a bonus game in particular, if it's 3-ball, every ball needs to be a little bit more important because bonus tends to max out at a certain point. So if you're playing against a player that maxes out their bonus every ball, you have zero chance if you didn't max out one ball. Is it a spinner game? Is it a game where you can just cradle up, find that shot, and hit it over and over and over? Those games generally tend you to need to cradle up. And if you're going to look at those spinners, like we were saying before, are the spinners juicy? If it's usually a spinner game, but it could be a bonus game, maybe you look into just playing bonus if the spinners aren't ripping super hard. Final question was, does it have a multi-ball? Most classics don't have a multi-ball. You'll kind of trend towards the area of pseudo-classics, or I'd call them mids. A game that comes to mind immediately is Robo-War. It was a game that was in a classics bank that I played recently at Indisc, and I would not personally call it a classic because it has multi-ball. But it's always important to look out for multi-ball in the more mid-ish Gottlieb classics because some of them do have those, and those are huge points if you get those. Let's talk about how to stay alive on the classic. You should not be slide saving. This is just a firm rule. These are things that are only available to moderns. If you slide save on a modern, you might get a double danger and get away with it. Maybe a tilt, but it depends on how it's set up. On a classic, you are tilting every time because there are no dangers on a classic. And if it's a tilt ends game, you're going to walk away sad, dejected, unhappy. So how do you avoid that? You want to think about where your shots are going to go before you even shoot the ball. And you might be thinking, that's super basic. I do that with any pinball game. I would argue that on moderns, we've been trained to not do that as much. For example, I'm going to bring up Godzilla. Right ramp, I know that if I shoot that and it rejects and it comes back down, that's scary and it might go down the middle. And on the left ramp, it's a little bit easier to catch the reject, but it's a harder shot, right? So you might be thinking, well, if it's scary to go for the right ramp, I won't go for it as often. But on Godzilla, that's your bread and butter. The game forces you to go for that. On a classic, you really have to be min-maxing the amount of danger you want to be taking versus the amount of points the game is going to give you. Is the risk worth the points? If there's a shot that might be worth the most points in the game if you go for it over and over, but you know that every time that you hit that shot, there's like a 30% chance that you just get an unsavable drain, you should not be going for that shot unless it's the only points on the game. Just hands down. I'd rather have controllable shot where I can hit it 10 times versus that one shot where I need to hit it 2 that could drain me every time I hit it. And then with classics as well, we're talking about tourneys. So to bring it to more of a competitive mindset, do you even need a first place in general? Classics tend to be a little bit more all over the place with how people score. If you're having a good game and you could do that one dangerous shot that would blow up your score and like definitely put you in first, it might not even be worth doing because you might want to just solidify where your standing is right there and live to tell a tale another day. How are we going to find our shots? First thing, cradle up. As I said before, certain classics will not allow you to cradle up, but you need to find your most consistent place to find your shots from. You want to be taking it from the same place every single time. On a game where you can't cradle up, maybe try to time it with the momentum from an in lane, find a way to feed that in lane as fast as possible. And then the question you want to ask is, where on the flipper is the shot that matters the most? You are staring at that flipper when you take that shot, and then I always have it quartered into like fractions in my head. So I'm like, it is halfway down the flipper before I take the shot. It is 2/3 of the way down the flipper before I take the shot. It's pretty much right. It's when the ball just edges over the tip. That's where the shot is. These are the things that I'm thinking of when I'm taking shots, so I know how to replicate it every single time I get that feed. Another thing you should be asking yourself, where should you hit the drops? Seems silly, but on a game like Frontier, for example, where that's a drop-heavy game on the far left side, people tend to say that those drops can kill you, but you kind of have to go for at least one of them, right? So I've heard from many people that they will tend to not shoot the drop targets dead center, but instead hit it to the left or right, so it rattles a little bit, and then you get a more random feed, which is safer than a feed that almost always drains you. So maybe you want to miss the drops slightly. I think that's a huge thing for classics that no one thinks about. And then finally, if you're out of control and you need to just take a shot, think about going up top, because up top is always good for classics to live another ball, another couple shots you get out of it. It's always going to be more important to survive rather than to go for that crazy shot on the fly. I'll have some footage of myself going over some of the Indus Classics finals so I can explain exactly what I'm talking about with some of these ideas. Behind footage so you can get a better feel of that on my Patreon. So check that out if you get a chance, but otherwise, I hope this helped you. If it did, leave a comment. If it didn't, leave a comment explaining why and what kind of things you'd be looking for. And I'll see you in the next episode. See you later.